Hi everyone, Aish here with Retro Handhelds. Today I want to talk about the RG505 and do an emulation showcase on it just to help you have a better idea of what it can and what it can't play. Before we get into that though, let's talk a little bit about the ergonomics of the device and the actual layout of it. So one of the big talking points lately has been the triggers. They're linear triggers, they're not stacked as a lot of people would have liked on a handheld this size, but I can say from use, it hasn't been that big of a problem. You know, most of the systems that are going to play on this, they're going to be just fine with this type of setup. And so let me explain that. For PSP, the PSP didn't have R2, L2, so just having L1, R1 on the sides is perfect. You know, a lot of the PSP games are going to be D-pad centered anyway, so it's right there. And for the ones that aren't, where you're going to be using the stick a lot more, since the trigger actually wraps around, it's not a problem to get to them. And R2, L2 and PSP just end up being used as hotkeys, at least for me. So this is actually kind of a good fit. Same thing for GameCube. For GameCube, GameCube didn't have 4 shoulder buttons, so it only had 3, which means that the triggers are perfectly set like this. When I'm playing, I still have reach for this one for my L1, which is gonna act like, well, I guess the GameCube wouldn't have L1, it would just be L1 as my trigger button. And on this side where I would have the Z button, my hand's already up here anyway. So I'm already up here with the buttons. If I need to use the C stick for anything, it's just a quick flick, move around the camera, but still I'm resting up here. But for the most part, this layout works just fine. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that stacked wouldn't have been better, but an actual day-to-day application, it hasn't been that big of a deal. Really, the only system where it becomes a problem is gonna be PlayStation 2, but even PlayStation, there wasn't a whole lot of use for them. At least in my experience, I haven't really had too much of an issue. They wrap around, it's easy to reach, the different height helps a lot. Let me see if I can grab the 552 for comparison. And so this is a good chance to give you a little size comparison too. The screen in the 552 is gonna be better, hands down. It's one of the best screens in any handheld, so we're not even really gonna get into that right now. What I do wanna talk about is the shoulder buttons. So as you can see, they both have this inline layout, but the 505 has different height shoulder buttons, so that makes a huge difference. So when I'm trying to play with the 552, and one of the reasons I pretty much only use this for Super Nintendo and Game Boy Advance games is because trying to get up here while using the stick is just not the best. You have to wrap around and really try and reach, because this one is actually slightly lower, so it kind of becomes a problem. Trying to hit that button, I have to reach all the way around. Over here, it's not that big of a problem because of the different heights. So I just have to press it right here. So again, not saying stacked wouldn't have been better, but you know, it's not the end of the world. Is now a little bit of a comparison to its big competition would be the RP3 Plus. Unfortunately, I don't have a 3 Plus, but I do have a Retroid Pocket 3. And as far as the outside of the device, it's going to be the exact same. So anything we talk about ergonomics with the Retroid Pocket 3 is going to apply to the 3 Plus, since they're basically the same system with just different internal. So just a little comparison here. One of the things that really surprised me is that I'm actually enjoying using the 505 a little bit more than the Retroid Pocket 3, just because it fits better in my hand. So let me show you what I mean here. So when I'm grabbing the Retroid Pocket 3, it's a lot shorter, so it's still comfortable, don't get me wrong, but it feels like there's a lot of empty space in my hands. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it's kind of hard to explain. Yeah, but I did make a change in these, so I have a rubber membrane in all my buttons over here. I'm not a fan of the clickiness. When I'm holding this, it's very comfortable, it's very slim, it's very light, but I feel like there's a lot of empty space. Whereas when I'm holding this one, it fills up my hand. It's more comfortable, especially if you're doing anything with the D-pad. I much prefer this D-pad to this one here. Just big difference in size right there. Buttons, let's see. The buttons on the 505 are bigger and they're easier to press. I wouldn't say they're mushy. They still give give you a nice feedback, but they're just easier to press. They're more enjoyable. These, once they made the swap dome switches to the rubber pads, it's gotten a lot better. I enjoy this a lot more, but just in day to day, I have to say I enjoy the 505 a lot more. Now, would I recommend the 505 or the Retro Pocket 3 Plus? It's gonna really depend on what you want. If you want to stream, it's kind of hard to say go with the 505 just because the layout of the Retro Pocket 3 is just better for streaming. If you're gonna be streaming Xbox, PS4, PS5, PC games, chances are the game's going to be set up to use the triggers in the exact same way the Retro Pocket 3 has them set up. So in that case, I would have to say go with the Retro Pocket 3. But if somebody just wants it for emulation, 505 is a great choice. It's very comfortable to use. The buttons feel great. The layout, like I said, it just works. You know, could it be better with stack buttons? Yes, I'm not gonna say it's not, but is it terrible? Not at all. I really like this. I would pick this over the Retro Pocket 3 for daily use. Even though the screen on the Retro Pocket 3 is higher resolution, I still really like the OLED screen on the 505. Menu navigation, it's gonna look better when you on the Retro Pocket 3. It's crisper, but once you're actually in game, it's a toss up. I like the deeper colors of the 505, and personally I think I'm going to be using this more. All right, well, now that that's out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the actual game performance. Unfortunately, a lot of the game testing that I had done was before the update, and I had to reset everything to update it, so I did lose most of the progress, but it's not a big deal. We're just going to be seeing a lot of games from the beginning. Personally, I was very surprised about the performance of this device. There's a lot of things that I was not expecting it to be able to do that are actually very playable. So before I load the first game though, this is going to be after the update. So Google Play is installed on this already, and took the performance down a little bit, but I don't have anything to really point at to really say that, but it feels like certain games are just running a little bit slower than they did before Google Play. As far as a quality of life thing, I prefer to have the Play Store, so I'm more than happy to give a couple frames just to have that there. But anyway, let's actually get into some game testing. So the first one I'm going to be showing here is Final Fantasy VI, the Ted Wasley remake, I believe. I might have gotten that wrong, but basically it's one of the restoration versions of the game, and I have it set to 4x fast forward, and we're at 266 280 frames, give or take, which means we have way more than enough overhead to run this game. Get into the actual gameplay here in a second. Okay, so here we're in game. We're going to get into the first fight of the game, and there we go, still flying. So this game is not going to be a problem at all. So next one is Yoshi's Island, which is one of the harder games to run. And let's get in here, and like I said, we can go all the way up to 275 frames. So game is not going to be an issue. Pretty much no Super Nintendo game is going to give you any trouble. Okay, so here we are with PlayStation 1. This is Final Fantasy IX, and just like with Super Nintendo, I'm going to go ahead and press fast forward, and we're at 400 and 500 frames per second. This is just going to fly, and I have it set to unlimited just to see how high it could go. I don't think you would want to play the game like this, but who knows. Trying to show is that there is plenty of overhead for these games, and none of them are going to give you any trouble. So let's move on to the next system. So here is one that I've actually never really spent any time playing. And this is SegaSaturn. I was asked to show it running at 2x, and here's House of the Dead running at 2x resolution. Frame showing up here, 61 out of 60. Not sure what's up with that, but whoa. Oh, so I'm probably going to spend some time with SegaSaturn. Like I said, something I just never really got into before, but I don't like these. There we go. But yeah, this is running great. Let me show you another game. So here we go. It's running at 2x resolution. Some minor graphical glitches, but I would say this is extremely playable. SegaSaturn in general is hard to emulate, so being able to get 2x out of this with actually no setup other than loading up the emulator, setting it to 2x resolution, installing the games, and that was it. I was ready to go. But yeah, this is a very capable system for SegaSaturn. Okay, let's move on. So here we have Nintendo DS using high quality 3D rendering, and it's playing full speed. This is Dragon Quest V, and basically every game that I tried was working perfectly fine. Nothing, no slowdown on anything. Touchscreen works great with basically all the games. So yes, this is a very capable DS system. Especially because of the screen, since it's a 16:9 screen, you have more room to play with. Personally, I like this setup where I have one big, one small screen, but you could also go with side by side. I just find that since there's always one main screen, I just prefer that. So let's move on. DS is not going to be an issue at all. Okay, so just really quick, I'm going to show some N64, but just like the other systems, you're not going to have any issues running this one. It's even on the 353 line, N64 was pretty good on Android, so no surprises here. As you can see, full speed, and you can use widescreen settings, you can upscale, it's gonna work just fine. So here we go with Dreamcast, and now that we have Google Play on this system, we can actually use the paid version of Redream and upscale. So on this one, just like with N64, you're not going to have any issues running any games. You're going to be able to upscale the widescreen, everything, and it looks great on this system. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here just because with other handhelds like the 353 line, we were already getting pretty good Dreamcast, and it's no surprise that on this one it's going to be even better. Okay, and here we have PSP God of War Chains of Olympus. I didn't mess with any settings, just increase the resolution up to 2, and the frame counter on top, it'll sometimes show 50, but I never actually feel any difference in game. It feels like it's running full speed, full 60, so I'm not really sure what's up with that, but yeah, the game looks great. It's a 2x resolution, like I said, and since this is a Vita screen, it's going to upscale like that perfectly. Now, unfortunately, because of the resolution of the screen itself, we can't go any higher, but I'm sure we'd be able to. I actually haven't messed with any settings on any emulators up to this point. SegaSaturn, none of that. I just loaded up the game, started playing, and increased the resolution. That's about it. No hacks, nothing. And as you can see here, we're running full speed. Now here's another game I've actually had issues with on other systems, and I've always been surprised by that because it doesn't seem like it'd be very demanding, but on this one, it seems to be playing perfectly. When I did load the game up though, there were some issues with the text, and all I did was switch from Vulkan to OpenGL, and that was it. That took care of it. I have heard that some games tend to run better on OpenGL, so that might be the only time where you kind of have to adjust things. But other than that, everything seems to be playing just fine. Here you go. So here's Swipe Up here, running full speed at 2x resolution. Okay, so now we're getting into what was the biggest surprise for me, and that was Nintendo 3DS. I was very surprised how many games were completely playable. This is Samus Returns, and even though it says it's not a full 30 and it'll dip here and there, you won't really notice it a lot while you're playing the game. It's completely playable. I spent I'd say about 2 hours playing it before I had to restart everything, and there was no point that I feel like the game speed was hurting me. So here's Dragon Quest VIII for the 3DS, and in the first battle we got full speed. Outside we're same full speed. Unfortunately, when you're entering certain buildings, it will drop. But I would say this is fully playable, especially since it is a JRPG. You don't really have to worry about fast reflexes or none of that, so you can take your time in battles. So here's Pokemon Ultra Sun. It's playing full speed. The only slowdown I've noticed is in cutscenes, but if Pokemon battles and everything, it's going to be full speed. As you can see right there, it's dropping, but once we actually get into it, it's again full speed. This is using the Citra MMJ emulator, 1X. And on this system, you're going to be able to play everything from the Pokemon Game Boy games all the way up to the 3DS games. So if you're looking for a very capable Pokemon machine, here you go. Okay, here's Pokemon Omega Ruby. This actually plays much better than Pokemon Ultra Sun. And like I said, using Citra Enhanced at 1x resolution, all these games were fully playable, full speed. On this one, there's barely any drops. A little bit longer, but unfortunately I had to delete all my progress to update. So here's a link between worlds, and this one is gonna have a little bit of a slowdown at first, but when you're indoors and after you spend a little bit of time playing it, it's gonna be full speed. And now, not every 3DS game is gonna work like this. You are gonna come across a few that are just gonna be either have too many graphical glitches or they're gonna be too slow. Like for example, Ocarina of Time. On this one, there's a lot of issues with it. So I wouldn't expect every game to work, but you're going to be very surprised as to how many games you can actually get running on this. Here you go, running around. There are some drops, like I said, but after you give it a little bit of time, it's going to get a lot better. This is a system that I would consider a bonus. This isn't going to be a featured one. It's just you're going to have a decent amount of games that are going to be playable, and it's just it's nice to be able to get 3DS at this price. So here's Fire Emblem Awakening. Those slowdowns, they're always going to happen with these 3DS games at first, but once it actually builds up shader cache, it gets a lot better. So don't worry if you load up a game and at first there's some stuttering. That's completely normal. Just give it a little bit of time and it'll be much better. See, here we go. This time around, no slowdown. Now we're going to get into GameCube, and I'm using MMGR2 OpenGL, and I'm getting... The game says it's running full speed and it feels fine. Even though the counters up there say 22, they'll dip here and there depending on what's going on the screen. But in actual gameplay, the game feels great. Okay, so here's Twilight Princess, and it's running full speed. Might have to do something about that vibration, but other than that, great experience on this one. And there might be some slowdown in the Hyrule Field, but that's kind of a known area where that happens, and you can use a Hyrule Field patch for that, which we can get into on another video if you want. I just wanted to show you that these games run great, and I'm not using PAL ROMs. So here's F-Zero GX, and unfortunately, this is one where I did have to use a different emulator for it because on MMJR2, it was just unplayable. As you can see, it's 31% speed right now, not playable at all. In this case, I used Dolphin for Handhelds. So here's Dolphin for Handhelds, and the benefit of using this emulator is you can actually go sub 1x resolution, and performance is much better on this side. Unfortunately, there really isn't a place to download this one. I know Russ from Retro Game Corp said he's going to be putting up on his site, so as soon as that's up, we'll let you guys know, because this is definitely a much better way to go for some of these harder to play games. Let's see what I had over here. I was running at 7x and it was pretty playable. Really good amount of games are going to play great, but it's not going to be perfect. Okay, here we are back to Dolphin MMJR2. This is Mario Sunshine, and again, I haven't really adjusted any settings, any of that. All I've done is load the game up and change the aspect ratio, and it's running great. FPS says 2021, but the game reports is running full speed and it feels fine. It doesn't feel like there's any real slowdown. So here's Pikmin, and this one also runs full speed. Again, no settings adjusted, just loaded up the game. So here's Need for Speed Most Wanted, and this is one of those games where the more you play it, the better it gets. Starts off a little bit slow, but again, that might be a shader thing. Once you can also try this on Dolphin for Handhelds. You're probably gonna want to drop it below 1x resolution to get the best performance, but I would say this game is pretty playable. Oops. And here we have Resident Evil 4. Now on this one, if you load it up with Vulkan, you're going to get a lot of graphical issues, so just load it up with OpenGL and you should have a pretty good time playing this game. As you can see, the screen gets full of enemies and there's no slowdown. So this is one of those Wii games that is going to play great. Unfortunately, New Super Mario Bros. Wii is not one of those games that plays great. There's a lot of slowdown. And even using Dolphin for handhelds, I had to go to a 0.5x resolution to get anything good out of it, and it just wasn't worth it for me. If you really want to play some Super Mario Bros., there's other versions of other systems you can play on this one. This is just not going to be one of them, unfortunately. Here's Super Mario Galaxy, and we couldn't really get New Super Mario Bros. To work, and this one is no different. There's a lot of slowdown, and just mapping the controls is kind of a pain. So I would say on this one, it's not really worth it. At cutscenes, you'll notice they go a little bit faster, but once you're back in game, it gets very, very slow. So we're just gonna move on. Here's what I was extremely surprised by. This is Xenoblade Chronicles, and in the first big fight, you get a lot of slowdown, but in this smaller fights and overworld, you're gonna get pretty close to full speed, as you can see here. And I wasn't very hopeful for this game after the New Super Mario Bros. And Mario Galaxy thing, but I'm very surprised at how well this game actually runs. As you can see, 30 FPS. And yeah, most of the slowdown just happens in big fights. Maybe a little bit when you enter a town, but nothing major there. So yeah, I'll leave this one up to you if you consider this playable or not. Okay, so now we're going to get into some PlayStation 2, and this here is Devil May Cry. This one, right now, I had to drop it sub 1x resolution. Now, I will say before I added Google Play to this system, I was able to play at 1x resolution, and I was actually getting better performance. With that, you could probably try turning off Google Play and see if that helps. But I did play for this for about 2 hours, and got played at times where there was a lot of enemies on screen with no slowdown. So it could just be me right now. I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but yeah, I would say this game is pretty playable. So here we have Dragon Quest VIII, and I'm just gonna let the intro run for a little bit. Unfortunately, this one isn't playable. It's about half speed. I just wanted to load it up to show it so I wouldn't forget to talk about it for a little bit. But yeah, this version just not playable at all. If you really want to play Dragon Quest VIII on this, try the 3DS version. Here's God of War 2, and if you do some heavy underclocking, you're going to get pretty playable experience. Now, it's not going to be smooth, it's not going to be perfect gameplay, but so hopefully that gives you an idea of what to expect from PlayStation 2. Some other games that you shouldn't have any problem with is Persona 3, Kingdom Hearts. Those are some other easier games to emulate. So yeah, for the most part, just consider PlayStation 2 a bonus and you won't be disappointed, because at this price point and with the chip in here, it's definitely not going to be a great PS2 machine, but you will be able to get a pretty decent amount out of it. Now, Switch is the final system I wanted to talk about. Don't expect many games to run at all. Only games I was actually able to get playing was Celeste, Messenger, and Bastion. But even those, there was a lot of glitches going on. The emulator would crash from time to time, or the actual character would move on its own, which was pretty weird. But yeah, if you really want to play some Celeste and some of those lighter games, this is not a bad way to do it. It's amazing that it's even running on this, but just don't expect a lot of games to run. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up. Personally, I think this is a great handheld with a lot to offer. I said I'm actually enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would as far as the ergonomics of it go. I really hope that this video helped answer some questions you might have about it. If there's anything else that you'd like to know, please leave a comment. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And thanks, guys. See you next time.